In the vast, silent vacuum of space, even the smallest noise can feel like a scream. In May 1969, just 2 months before the historic Apollo 11 moon landing, 3 astronauts embarked on a mission that would push the limits of human endurance and technology. Thomas Stafford, John Young, and Eugene Cernan were the crew of Apollo 10, the high-stakes dress rehearsal for the ultimate lunar touchdown. Their task was to test everything except the actual landing itself, descending to within 50,000 feet of the lunar surface to survey the terrain. But as they rounded the far side of the moon, moving into the deep radio shadow where Earth disappears from view, they encountered something they never expected. For 60 minutes, they were completely cut off from NASA Mission Control in Houston, leaving them alone with the cold silence of the cosmos. Or so they thought. Instead of the quiet they anticipated, a bizarre, rhythmic whistling sound began to pulse through their headsets. It was not static, and it was not a signal from Earth, because they were behind millions of tons of lunar rock that blocked every terrestrial broadcast. Cernan called it outer space type music, a description that has since become legendary in the annals of space exploration. The sound was eerie, persistent, and undeniably musical, vibrating through the electronics of the lunar module and the command module simultaneously. As they drifted through the darkness, the 3 men looked at each other, wondering if they were hearing things or if something was out there with them. This was not a glitch in their minds. The recorders on board were capturing every note of this strange celestial symphony for posterity. For decades, the public knew almost nothing of this event, as the transcripts remained classified in the secure NASA archives. It was not until 2008 that the recordings were finally released, sparking a firestorm of speculation about what those men actually heard. To understand the mystery, we have to look back at the intensity of the Apollo program during the height of the space race. NASA was under immense pressure to beat the Soviet Union to the moon, and every mission was calculated down to the millisecond. Apollo 10 was the final bridge to the moon landing, designed to prove that the lunar module could separate, descend, and dock successfully in lunar orbit. The crew were all seasoned veterans, men of science and steel who were not prone to hallucinations or flights of fancy. Yet, as they entered the lunar far side for the first time, the atmosphere inside the cabin changed dramatically. The sun disappeared behind the horizon of the moon, plunging them into a darkness more profound than anything experienced on Earth. It is in this void that the whistling began. You hear that whistling sound? Cernan asked his crewmates with a hint of confusion in his voice. Stafford and Young confirmed they heard it too, describing it as a weird, woo-woo noise that seemed to fluctuate in pitch. They joked about it to ease the tension, calling it great music, but the underlying unease was palpable in their voices. They were professionals, but they were also humans alone in the most hostile environment imaginable. The sound continued for the entire hour they were out of radio contact with Earth, fading only when they began their ascent back toward the front side. Why did they wait so long to talk about it? The culture of NASA in the 1960s was one of extreme scrutiny and psychological testing. Astronauts were terrified of being seen as mentally unstable or prone to seeing things that were not there. Reporting space music could have meant being grounded for life, a risk no astronaut was willing to take during the prime of the moon program. They discussed whether they should even mention it to the flight controllers once they regained contact with the ground. Ultimately, they decided to keep it between themselves for the duration of the flight, though the onboard tapes captured their entire conversation. When the recordings were finally declassified, the world was treated to a rare glimpse of the vulnerability and wonder these men felt. Theories immediately began to circulate among enthusiasts and skeptics alike, ranging from the plausible to the truly wild. Some suggested it was the interaction of charged particles in the lunar environment, while others pointed to the moon's lack of a magnetic field. However, NASA scientists eventually provided a more grounded, though no less fascinating, explanation for the music. The whistling was likely caused by interference between the very high-frequency radios in the 2 separate spacecraft. Because the lunar module and the command module were close together but operating on slightly different frequencies, their radio waves overlapped. This overlap created a beat frequency, a physical phenomenon where two waves combine to create a new, lower frequency sound that can be heard as a whistle. It is a common occurrence in radio engineering, but in the context of the lunar far side, it took on a haunting, otherworldly quality. Even though the mystery has a scientific answer, it does not diminish the power of the experience for the Apollo 10 crew. It serves as a reminder that space is a place where the familiar rules of Earth often do not apply. Even the most rigorous scientific training cannot fully prepare a person for the profound isolation of the lunar far side. When we look back at the history of Apollo, we often focus on the flags and the footprints, but the music of Apollo 10 tells a different story. It tells a story of the human senses trying to make sense of the unknown. It reminds us that even in a world of equations and engineering, there is still room for wonder and mystery. The Apollo 10 astronauts returned to Earth as heroes, having paved the way for Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to make history. Their mission was a total success, proving that the hardware worked and the lunar orbit was navigable. But they also brought back a secret that stayed buried for 40 years, a whisper of the strange things that happen when humans venture into the deep. Today, we can listen to those tapes and hear the crackle and whistle of the lunar music for ourselves. It sounds like a ghost in the machine, a haunting reminder of the pioneers who risked everything to reach for the stars. We are now preparing to return to the moon with the Artemis program, and new generations of astronauts will once again enter that radio shadow. Will they hear the same whistling, or will the silence of the far side have new secrets to reveal? As our technology improves, we might demystify the sounds of the cosmos, but the feeling of being alone in the dark will never change. The music of Apollo 10 remains one of the most captivating chapters of space history, a perfect blend of science and the supernatural. It challenges our perception of the void and forces us to listen more closely to the silence. Whether it was simple radio interference or a cosmic coincidence, it captured the imagination of millions around the globe. It stands as a testament to the bravery of the men who went where no one had gone before. The moon is a lonely place, a desert of dust and craters that has watched the Earth for billions of years. To hear sounds, there is to feel a connection to the environment, even if that connection is just a byproduct of our own technology. The astronauts were not just technicians, they were explorers in the truest sense of the word. They pushed the boundary of human experience into a realm where the laws of physics manifest in strange ways. The far side of the moon is still one of the most mysterious places in our solar system. It is a place of total darkness during the lunar night and total silence from the chatter of humanity. For that 1 hour, the crew of Apollo 10 were the most distant humans in history. They were on the edge of the abyss, listening to the static of the universe. The music they heard was a bridge between the known and the unknown. Even if we explain it with radio waves and frequencies, the feeling it evoked remains valid. It is the feeling of the pioneer hearing the wind across a new frontier. As we build more powerful telescopes and send probes further into the solar system, we continue to hear things we do not understand. Jupiter has its own radio emissions that sound like crashing waves and whistling birds. Saturn has a complex radio signature that sounds like a haunting choir. The universe is a noisy place, filled with electromagnetic radiation that our ears were never meant to hear. We use technology to translate these waves into sound, turning the invisible into the audible. In 1969, the Apollo 10 crew did not need special equipment to hear the universe. Their own communication system did it for them. It was an accidental discovery that gave us a new perspective on the moon. The far side is not just a dead rock. It is a place where energy interacts and dances. The transcripts of their conversation show a mix of professional focus and genuine awe. They were trying to complete their mission while being serenaded by the cosmos. When the moon finally moved and they re-established contact with Houston, the music stopped. The familiar voices of mission control replaced the whistling, and the astronauts returned to their checklists. but the memory of that sound stayed with them, even if they were hesitant to share it. It reminds us that there is always more to learn and more to hear. The history of space exploration is full of these small, human moments that get lost in the grand narrative. We remember the big speeches and the giant leaps, but we forget the whistling in the dark. That whistling is the sound of curiosity, the sound of the unknown reaching out. As we look to the future, we should expect more surprises. The universe does not give up its secrets easily, and it often speaks in a language we are not yet ready to translate. The story of the Apollo 10 music is a cautionary tale about the limits of our understanding. It teaches us to be humble in the face of the infinite. It reminds us that even when we think we have explained everything, there is still room for a little mystery. The 3 astronauts of Apollo 10 were the first to hear the song of the lunar far side. They were the first to experience the profound isolation of the radio shadow. Their journey was a triumph of human will and engineering, and their music is a reminder that the stars have a voice of their own. We just have to be quiet enough to listen to it. Every time a new mission heads toward the moon, we are reminded of Stafford, Young, and Cernan. We are reminded of their bravery and their curiosity. We are reminded of the woo-woo sound that filled their headsets. And we are reminded that space is the ultimate frontier, a place of endless discovery. The music of Apollo 10 will play on in our history books forever. It is a haunting melody that invites us to look up and wonder, what else is waiting for us in the silence? What other songs are being played in the depths of the galaxy? We may not have all the answers yet, but we are listening. And that is the most important part of the journey. The music of the spheres is not just a poetic idea, it is a physical reality. It is the sound of energy moving through the void. It is the sound of the universe being alive. And for 1 hour in 1969, 3 men were the only ones in the world who could hear it. That is a legacy worth remembering. That is a story worth telling over and over again. As we move forward into a new era of space travel, let us keep our ears open. You never know what you might hear when you are behind the moon. It might just be the most beautiful music you have ever heard.